Huh. Okay, let's start with a number that honestly is hard to wrap your head around. 64 confirmed dead and another 65 people still missing.
Yeah, those are staggering figures. But the detail that really stands out from the sources is the speed.
Exactly. That official death toll, it jumped by 17 people in just 12 hours.
Mm-hmm. And when you see an escalation like that, that fast, it tells you the situation on the ground is unfolding much quicker than anyone can really track in real time.
It suggests chaos, really. The initial reports are almost immediately out of date.
Right. It signals a catastrophe that just, well, overwhelmed everything almost instantly. Not a slow build, but a sudden, devastating event.
So that's what we're digging into today in this deep dive. We want to go beyond those initial headlines, look at the source material, and understand what exactly happened with this flooding in central and eastern Mexico.
And specifically get a handle on the why behind that intense rainfall, the concentration in Veracruz, Hidalgo, and Puebla, and the scale of the official response, which was, frankly, massive.
It's about getting you, our listeners, informed on a crisis that essentially erupted overnight.
Okay, so if we look at that initial picture, those casualty numbers came from Mexico's civil defense head, Laura Velázquez.
Right. She provided the baseline figures, anchoring it to those three states.
But as you said, that 12-hour increase, adding another 17 fatalities, just fundamentally changes how you have to look at it.
Yeah, it shifts everything. It's not just about response planning anymore. It becomes an active, desperate search and recovery operation under, well, just terrible conditions.
It implies those early assessments were likely way off, probably because visibility was zero, rescue teams couldn't even get in.
Couldn't reach the areas where the worst was happening. It underscores how quickly it spiraled beyond any kind of local control. And, it's crucial to understand this didn't happen in a vacuum. The sources are clear. The immediate cause was intense rainfall, yes. But you have to put that in context, right?
Exactly. This deluge hitting that central eastern area was really just maybe the most brutal chapter in what's been an unusually wet year across Mexico. That context is key. We're seeing reports that 2025 has seen particularly heavy rains overall, and there's a specific detail. Rainfall records were actually set way over in the capital, Mexico City.
And that Mexico City record isn't just a side note. It's really relevant.
Well, it tells you that the whole system was already stressed. Think about it. Ground saturation, water tables, river levels across that whole central plateau and down towards the Gulf, they were already high. So it wasn't like a sudden storm hitting a dry region.
Not at all. This intense rain basically hit an environment that was already primed, perfectly set up for maximum impact, maximum devastation.
Okay, so saturated ground, swollen rivers. How did the reports describe the actual physical impact when this final wave of rain hit Veracruz, Hidalgo, and Puebla? We need to sort of visualize the force here. The descriptions are pretty brutal. We're not talking about, like, gentle rising water. The sources say rivers didn't just overflow, they became these destructive torrents. Yeah, sending huge volumes of water just smashing through entire villages. It wasn't just damaging homes, it was literally sweeping structures, communities, everything away.
Wow. So more like a geological event than just weather.
Kinda, yeah. It was incredibly rapid, incredibly forceful.
And given the terrain there, lots of mountains, hills,
Yeah.
that rain must have triggered landslides too.
Absolutely. That's the secondary disaster, and it complicates everything. You've got rushing water and moving earth happening at the same time.
Which makes rescue almost impossible in some areas, I'd imagine. Blocking access, burying people.
Precisely. Landslides are notorious for hampering rescue efforts. They cut off communities, and crucially, they destroy the very lifelines you need to bring help in. The sources are specific about roads and bridges being swept away. Critical infrastructure just gone.
And when the roads and bridges go, especially major ones, that's when you see communities become completely isolated, right?
Instantly. It turns rescue from just being difficult into this huge logistical nightmare. Aid, equipment, you can't drive it in anymore.
It has to be flown in, or maybe brought in by boat, if possible.
Exactly. It really speaks to maybe the fragility of the infrastructure in that region. Losing those connections paralyzes local commerce, sure, but immediately it paralyzes the ability of local and even state responders to cope.
They're overwhelmed. The civilian chain of command just breaks down.
Which is precisely why the federal government had to step in so massively.
Okay, let's talk about that mobilization, because the scale mentioned in the reports is, well, it's something else. It was led right from the top, President Claudia Sheinbaum directing this rapid deployment.
Yeah, it wasn't a gradual thing. The sources indicate an immediate activation of the federal response system.
And to deal with that kind of infrastructure collapse, you need military logistics fast.
That's right. And the number that jumps out is the deployment of more than 10,000 troops.
10,000. Just pause on that for a second. That's a huge number.
It is. It signifies that the government saw this not just as a local emergency, but as something requiring, well, basically a full-scale military logistical operation focused purely on humanitarian relief.
It's a recognition that the civilian infrastructure was completely overwhelmed, that you needed resources with unique capabilities.
hmm And the reports confirm it wasn't just soldiers. They deployed high-value equipment specifically for this kind of disaster.
Like what?
Boats for navigating flooded areas where roads are impassable, essentially rivers now, and planes and helicopters.
Essential for aerial assessment and for getting aid and specialized teams into those completely cut-off zones, especially where landslides wiped out roads.
Exactly. Air transport becomes the only viable option in many cases.
And the logistics of just supporting those 10,000 troops, let alone distributing aid to survivors. Food, water, medical supplies, shelter, it's immense, especially in such difficult, hazardous terrain.
It really is. And while the immediate focus is, of course, search rescue, clearing debris, they also had to think about displacement.
Right, people forced from their homes.
The sources confirm shelters were opened pretty much immediately, which is crucial, providing basic security when your entire village might have just been washed away. It's that baseline for starting any kind of recovery. So you've got this incredibly complex operation happening all at once, dealing with rising casualties, navigating impossible terrain, managing air and water logistics for thousands of personnel, and trying to shelter and stabilize potentially tens of thousands of displaced people. The complexity is, hard to overstate. And what's striking is the speed and scale of that military response. It shows the government viewed this not as just, a bad storm, but as an immediate national threat demanding the absolute maximum response.
A realization that normal procedures just weren't going to cut it.
Precisely. Conventional means we're never going to be enough here.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try to pull the key takeaways together for you, the listener. What have we learned from this deep dive?
I think the numbers really anchor it. That shocking speed of the rising death toll, 17 more in just half a day, and the sheer destruction focused in Veracruz, Hidalgo, and Puebla. And then there's the response, directly proportional to that devastation. A massive federal effort, spearheaded by the president, deploying over 10,000 troops with specialized equipment, planes, helicopters, boats needed, because the fundamental infrastructure, roads and bridges, were simply gone. That logistical challenge is key.
So if we connect this awful immediate disaster back to the bigger picture you mentioned earlier, the fact that this happened during a year that had already set rainfall records across Mexico, what does that tell us looking forward? What about preparation?
Well, that's maybe the crucial question this leaves you with. When you see a localized catastrophic event like this happen against a backdrop of wider historical rainfall extremes, it really suggests we need to think beyond just traditional seasonal planning.
It's not just a one-off weather event. It might not be. It could be a signpost indicating how much preparation, maybe even infrastructure design itself, and regional resilience strategies need to change to adapt, really, to what seems like an increasing frequency, or at least intensity, of these extreme weather events in this part of the world. You have to ask, how ready is the current setup for what might be a new normal of hydrological extremes? A really critical question. And the sobering thought to end on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.